I'm Alex Tabarrok, the Director of Research for the Independent Institute. The Independent Institute is a nonpartisan public policy research organization. Every year we put out a number of books on economics, politics, law, history, and other topics. We have a journal, the Independent Review, and we host forums like this one, both here in Washington, D.C. and in Oakland, California, to help the public understand issues of public policy. In the landmark case, District of Columbia v. Heller, the Supreme Court ruled for the first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. Now, Washington, D.C., however, is a very peculiar place, as many of you who live here know. Legally, it is a federal enclave. And in the context of that decision, it left it open how the right to keep and bear arms applies to other areas. So in cases like McDonald v. Chicago, the Supreme Court is being asked to rule on whether the Second Amendment limits only the reach of the federal government, or whether, like most of the rest of the Bill of Rights, it also applies to state and local governments. Now, I'm going to leave that discussion to our distinguished speakers, but I did want to comment on one aspect of the case which I think is notable. These cases really indicate the power of ideas, the power of scholarship. District of Columbia v. Heller, it did not come out of the blue. It was preceded by decades of scholarship. Not lobbying or political action, though these may sometimes matter as well, but detailed and extensive historical, textual, and legal research into the history and meaning of the Second Amendment, and research which has bettered our understanding not just of the Second Amendment, but of the entire Constitution. And without question, this scholarship, it changed minds. It brought many people who would not naturally favor or would not naturally be inclined to strong support of the Second Amendment, people like Lawrence Tribe, for example, to name just one, to change their minds, to nevertheless to recognize what the scholarship implied about what the Second Amendment says and what the Second Amendment means. Two of the scholars who have done the deepest work in the trenches on the Second Amendment are here today. Stephen Halbrook is the author of numerous books and articles on a very wide range of issues. I'm going to mention just two of them today. First, the Founders' Second Amendment. Now, I'm really a big fan of this book because it does what I think no other book does, which is to really put you in the place of the founders and their times, to make it clear what the events of the day, events like the Boston Tea Party, like Lexington Common, what they meant to the people of the time, and how the founders wrote the Constitution in light of their experiences. This is not a dry treatise. This is a riveting, popular, fun book on the Revolution and its meaning. I also like to point to Securing Civil Rights, Friedman, the 14th Amendment, and the right to bear arms. Now, in my view, this is the book of the moment on the Second Amendment because it concerns the crucial question which is before the Supreme Court today, whether the Second Amendment applies to the states or just to the federal government. It's also the book which I think forevermore places the Second Amendment alongside the 14th in the context of civil rights, and particularly the civil rights of African Americans. I should also mention that Stephen has 3 times argued before the Supreme Court and 3 times won, so it's pretty good batting average. Our second scholar is my colleague at George Mason, Nelson Lund. Nelson is a prolific scholar and expert, not just on the Second Amendment, but on federalism, civil rights, and election law. I printed out his CV, his 31-page CV. Really puts a number of us lesser scholars to shame. In addition to being a tremendous scholar, Nelson has clerked for Sandra Day O'Connor. He's been an attorney in the Department of Justice and associate counsel for the president. He's also served with Jimmy Carter and Jim Baker on the Commission on Federal Election Reform. In addition to his scholarly work, he's a frequent commentator on TV and in the popular press. He is also the author of a brilliant brief to the Supreme Court on the Heller case, which I recommend to you all. So it's a great pleasure for the Independent Institute to host these two scholars today and to have them speak on the Supreme Court and the battle for Second Amendment rights. We're going to begin with Stephen Halbrook, followed by Nelson Lund, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end.